So our opportunity now is to ask some questions. Are there any questions from the floor, please? Ask any one of our panel members, but perhaps Catherine's got the microphone, she can walk around with it. So, Kirsty.
Question to Loyd, sorry I'm putting on the spot, Loyd. Excuse my ignorance, but obviously with this huge drive with the electric vehicles, what position are we at in terms of, I don't honestly know in terms of batteries how long they last, but what position are we in terms of disposal of the batteries? It's all very well and good moving forward with electric vehicles and obviously all the technology. Sorry, I'm just picking myself up, I've got a travel business, but we've just been talking about the LPG fuel and stuff and the batteries with cruise lines. So yeah, I'm just really interested to hear the other side of that.
It's, there's a lot of publicity about the source of lithium and got to use this as well. Right, there's a lot of publicity, a lot of debate about the source of lithium and its disposal. So first of all, put it into perspective. So lithium is used once within a vehicle. Yeah. If you fill your car with petrol or diesel, that's burnt. Yeah, and then you fill it up again and you burn it again. So the comparison is, you're not comparing apples with apples. Lithium is mined and it's put in, the battery is created and it lasts the whole lifetime of the vehicle. And my experience, I've been running electric vehicles as you'd expect for about 7 years. The last electric vehicle I had disposed of, contract hire, disposed of in November last year. Had that for 3 years, and actually the capacity of that battery increased during the life of the vehicle. And manufacturers are now working on lifetime batteries for cars. They will last the lifetime of the vehicle. So the disposal and recycling of the material within the battery is becoming less of an issue. Lithium can be recycled. The recycling process and the contractors for recycling lithium, that's not a mature industry yet, but it can be done. But just in essence, the construction of an electric vehicle is, the components are far more recyclable than a conventional internal combustion engine vehicle. Is that a reasonable?
Yes, no, that's great.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, Loyd. Any other questions for our panel today? Gareth.
Oh, that's right, I can project. 2 more pictures on the mic. It's not going to go well. Nathan, question for you. Great platform. Does it have an API? Is it queryable to be able to extract some of this macro data or data at an organisation level?
Yes, it does. So obviously, it's very much a kind of an evolutionary process, as you guys will know in your business as well. So progressively over the years, we've built that API functionality into the platform. We're not where we want to be, but it's just a continuing evolving thing. But essentially, we have an API suite that can pull data out of the customer data sets and present that. And what we typically would do at the moment is we will present it in dashboards on our own platform. But we're starting to engage with some of our larger customers actually about their own internal dashboards and how we make that work. So in some cases, actually, that completely closes the circle, right? So you don't actually need to pull the data out of the client organisation at all. We just kind of go in and manage that page within their own system.
Amazing. Thank you.
Further questions? Chris Crash.
It's a question for Nathan, really. It's about tons. If I'm speaking properly, like tons measurement. So I was curious, because I'm working with a big organisation and going to do a project with us to study social value impact of the programme. I work in education and get teaching for school. But I'm curious about tons measurement, whether that's validated by research in universities, because I'm part of Cambridge Assessment Network. It's a really interesting assessment generally speaking. So my question really is, how do we know that the measurements you're taking, the indicators you're giving to your clients are valid and accurate in terms of where it's measuring social impact? Has there been any study around that?
Yeah, great question. So one of the kind of founding principles of the TOMS was transparency about the way in which we've created what we call proxy values. Simon referred to them, which are the multipliers, if you like, that give you that financial equivalent value. So we're completely open. You can, if you want to, there's oodles and oodles of pages of detail about exactly what the data sources are and where that all comes from. We think that's a fundamental principle and an issue with some social value measurement where you just get an output number and you don't actually have any idea how it's been constructed. We'd rather be less accurate, if you like, and more transparent than the other way around.
Next question. Katrina.
Shall I just shout?
No, it's okay.
I'm at the back, you see.
We're coming along.
Thank you. Adrian, it's a question for you and the LEP, really.
Oh dear.
I kind of wonder what role the LEP sees for itself in terms of a network social value group within Hertfordshire for the betterment of the county as a whole.
Exactly that, Katrina. You know, we are very much keen to be engaged in so many different ways, and you know, the economy and the sort of helicopter view of the economy is quite important for Hertfordshire. I think has been demonstrated over the 10 or 11 years that the LEP has been in existence. The LEP has been very closely working with businesses, developing sectors. So if we just talk about what happens in Stevenage, you know, we have a catalyst and a catapult that's there, and our first company to come out of that some 8 years later is just taking on its £60 million building in the middle of Stevenage, where they're about to create 2,000 cures, for want of a better word, cell and gene therapy cures, and the knock-on effect of that is that will cost the NHS about £1 billion a year, but it'll actually save the NHS £8 billion a year because of the way that the cures are going to be administered. So, you know, here we have at Stevenage such huge technology that could make a huge difference in our lives going forward. So, I mean, all of this stuff is happening with the people that are living in Hertfordshire. We have 4 great colleges. We have about 116 schools in Hertfordshire, which Chris is headmaster of one. We have some fantastic brands in Hertfordshire. You know, Airbus in Stevenage is one to mention. We've got GSK, lots of different companies, lots of different sort of organic interaction. And, you know, where the LEP sits is looking at all of that, creating the strategy for the future, attracting inward investment, helping our colleges to develop skills, and not just our colleges, but our private training providers as well, working with our social services providers as well, talking to the NHS, trying to join the dots between all the bits that perhaps local authorities and councils are not able to do because they're looking at it from different perspectives. So it's the helicopter view is the way I like to look at it, and Hertfordshire's very important to me. Having travelled the world with my business over the last 40 years, I like coming back to Hertfordshire, you know, and there's a lot going on here, and we need to make the most of it for everybody, whether you're ageing, whether you're young. I've got 3 little grandchildren at the moment who are all going to share parts of what we're developing in this county, and so much to do. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point that we've got something in the county that is doing exactly that in terms of that overarching view, because it's something we should be celebrating if we're achieving, rather than it just happening by default and there being no knowledge or awareness of the impact that we can have as a county if we're working collectively.
Yes, I mean, the Chancellor announced in his budget recently that he was not minded to finance LEPs. It really does sound like a huge amount of money, doesn't it? But in fact, it's £250,000. And, you know, the LEP is responsible for attracting millions into the county, so we can exist, and we have our county council supporting us fully, and we've got our 10 local authorities also very keen to support us because of the good that we've delivered over the years. And it just, that helicopter view is good because we share the knowledge with our local authorities. We all get behind the sort of game plan, if you like, for how we make life livable. Helen, one of my led colleagues, yes please, if you wouldn't mind stepping in.
I'm Helen Pollock. I'm the LEP's Clean Growth Manager, so my role is really to grow a green economy. How can we grow our green businesses and help work collectively with the councils and all our partners to ensure that we have a more sustainable environment, and that's an economically sustainable environment, a socially sustainable environment, and an environmentally sustainable environment. So actually on my desk, as soon as I will be leaving at 1:30 because I've got a meeting, and that meeting is actually looking at a report that we've done, a very deep dive analysis on the low carbon environmental goods and services sector of Hertfordshire. How much are our green businesses worth? Where are they? How can we then use these clusters, this information to accelerate those businesses? So that's really part of my strategy going forward, once I've got the data and analysed it, is looking at the direction and creating that network of businesses that really we can focus our attention on. But just to bring in some of the other social value stuff that we're doing at the moment. So a big area of my focus currently is on retrofitting the domestic houses. And partly it's retrofit, I'm passionate about it because it helps fuel poverty, it helps the health of our residents, it has cost of living benefits, it has economic growth benefits of all the businesses that need to help go into homes and put in, I don't know, cavity wall insulation or roof insulation or monitoring equipment, etc. So lots of benefits with retrofit from an environmental point of view and a business point of view. But Hertfordshire has recently won over £40 million worth of social housing decarbonisation fund. Now, if those businesses, and if we can keep the money of those businesses within Hertfordshire, we're talking about 100 to 150 million pounds worth of investment going into retrofit. And that's just one area. So, and that has huge amounts of social value of upskilling our workforce to be able to deliver it, our businesses benefiting from it, and from our environment benefiting from it. So those are just sort of, I think it's a very big picture when it comes to sustainability. We have to work together because we're stronger together to do that. But that's part of the Hertfordshire Climate Change Sustainability Partnership, where all the local authorities are collectively looking at the bigger picture of sustainability measures, whether it's about how we have tax policies and looking at their licensing arrangements for EV, or whether it's about doing collectively solar together schemes, which some of the residents here might have seen leaflets in, and we've got a huge amount of solar panels that are sort of coming up, I think 1,600 solar panels are due. So there's lots going on, but it's about focusing where we can have a big impact and accelerating growth when it comes to anything green.
Thank you so much, Helen. Susie? We'll just get you the microphone if that's okay, Susie.
Yeah, sorry, there you are.
Thank you, Catherine.
So I manage a local grassroots charity called Home Start Hertfordshire, and our primary purpose is to support parents so that their children can have the best start in life. Now, obviously, in terms of what we're talking about here, is that investment in the future. It's investing in our future entrepreneurs, business people, staff. We are a very small charity. This is a big system, and from sort of looking from my perspective, my question is, how do I get into this? We've got so much social value to bring in terms of investment in the community that enhances, you know, a lot of people's lives. How do we get into this big kind of strategy, and how do we access funding and things from that? I don't know who that's to. Everyone.
I have 4 experts. Do you have any views on that? How can we net local social value?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does look like a kind of big thing, doesn't it? And one of the dangers, I think, in kind of creating these systems is that large organisations, large corporates can respond to them, they can resource up, they can kind of figure it out and spend money on it. And actually, the organisations that are really delivering the social value on the ground are organisations like yours. So there's not a single answer to this, but there's there has to be a relentless focus on making it as accessible and straightforward and as possible, but also at the same time understanding how to value effectively what you are doing. And then on the kind of delivery end, I think it's about conversations like this really, because networks like this sort of place-based approaches to social value can position organisations like yours in that network, and then that starts to create the benefits from that. So we have to look at it in a kind of holistic way and do all those things to make it work for you.
All of that. I think one of the things that is also possible now, because everything is sort of public record, if you look at the sort of the big public procurement people in Hertfordshire particularly, so if you look at the council, where have those contracts gone? You can find it all online. So where are the councils spending all of the money at local level and at the county level? And look at the suppliers, where those contracts are over £1 million, contacting the supplier and asking what are they doing for social value, and if you can enhance some of that, because they will have to be incorporating that as part of their tender responses. So I would go to where is the money being spent currently, because they're likely to win more contracts, I guess, and then find those organisations, find out who's responsible for the sales of their social value, and see if you can have that conversation.
Thank you, Simon. Sarah?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. But can I just say, Homestar is the most amazing charity. So if any of you are looking for a charity, they do absolutely incredible work. I think it's really tough because that's definitely a great idea. But if we're totally honest, sometimes businesses don't behave as ethically as they should. And certainly we've experienced, and many charities within Hertfordshire would have experienced being courted by large business to be part of a bid, to be told that they want you to do the bid with them, and then actually you never hear from them again. So actually I think that's probably something for all of us, making sure that we and our businesses never sort of behave like that. But I think as well it's about trying to make those local connections. So sometimes the very best support that you get is when you meet other business people and you find another business that actually becomes really interested in the work that you're doing and wants to make a difference with you. So I think, all of us, it's hard when you are running small businesses and we do everything on a shoestring and we're all doing multiple roles all the time. But as much time as we can spend to actually being connected, the networks that Adrian's sort of talking about is really important, because actually it comes down to relationship, doesn't it? It comes about, wanting to make the world a better place together through the work that we spend so much time doing. So I do commend your work.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, and of course the LEP acting in a sort of a global capacity, maybe we could be listing all of those opportunities and the contacts for each of those companies. So small directory, we've done it on Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal in terms of skills. We've got an extremely well knitted together delivery service in terms of HOP, and maybe we need to have some form of social portal networking aspect. But I've just spent a few more £1,000 worth of the LEP's money there on doing that. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and it's all about working together to actually deliver the very best services for Hertfordshire. And speaking as somebody that lives here, I'd quite like that to be the case. Anyway, any other questions, please? I do realise that we're standing between you and that lovely buffet that's outside, so hopefully, Aaron, can you just check that it's actually outside and ready? Because I'd hate to send a hungry force out. Richard?
I've only got one question, but just to sort of re-emphasise what's been said, well, I sit as a member on one of the committees for the LEP. They're doing fantastic work, and they're here to continue. I sit as a governor for one of the colleges, so for North Arts College. They're doing fantastic work in the skills and piecing that together, and it's really about that network, businesses coming together to understand what's already available to them. There's a big communication piece to be done. But the questions for the panel really is more, what we're finding as this is rapidly growing is more and more organisations are requiring various different things, but each thing is slightly differently worded, and it's becoming just a minefield in terms of how much you have to provide. Do we see any light at the end of the tunnel to try and consolidate some of that down, or do we think it's just going to be an ever-widening piece of, we have to keep ahead of all of these different metrics for these different organisations?
Is there a common denominator?
You can see from my reaction that you touched a little bit of a nerve there. I think we have to accept that we can't get to a single standard that everybody adopts that's exactly the same everywhere. That's just not human nature. And if you look at the way in which this agenda is evolving, what you find is that the kind of different groups of interests obviously have different perspectives on what's important to them. So the important thing to do is to try and get as much common ground as possible and to figure out how to map effectively from one variant of it to another. Now, having said that, I think there's some kind of more basic stuff that the public sector could and should be doing around this. So one of the things that we're doing at the moment is we're running a kind of procurement best practice work stream, and you might be aware that the way in which central government procures for social value is very different from the way in which local authorities procure for social value, and the NHS actually is doing something different again. And within the NHS, it's kind of different within the NHS as well. So that doesn't kind of come together without a fair bit of effort and commitment from different parties to make common ground. But our experience is, with the task force that we created, is when you do create that common ground, it's incredibly powerful. I think you will see some. I think you will see a lot more standardisation, but you won't get a single model. Basically, is the summary. But we all need to work harder to make it all come together.
Thank you very much. Oh, one more question. We'll make this one our last one because the sandwiches are waiting.
Thank you, Nathan, for that last response, which I'm picking up on. You say some form of standardisation might be nothing in the future. My business has we have to intend for various items of work and such like, which involves the social value elements of it. I'm also getting ESG functioning quite a lot developed, particularly from our foreign clients. So do you think there'll be any standardisation of ESG?
Yes, I do. I think you can see that happening already with GRI, Global Reporting Initiative, and what was SASB, Sustainable Accounting Standards Board, has come into IFRS, which is the overarching accounting body for social value. And as you're probably aware, IFRS is very much about setting accounting standards that are applicable across the world. So with that sitting in that area, the kind of tectonic plates, if you like, are starting to shift. And also what you've got is at the European level, the European Union bringing their own sustainability reporting directive in, but in consultation with these, if you like, market-led regulatory approaches from GRI and SASB. So it is all coming together for sure, and I think it's obviously a big agenda, and what we need to move from is a pure kind of disclosure-based approach, which is just about giving investors and customers and other stakeholders loads and loads of information about companies that they don't really understand, to something that actually talks about the kind of the value added that businesses are doing, and that's the kind of key challenge I think we're going to face going forward. But I do think there's a lot of common ground starting to show in this.
All I would just add to that, if I may, just to say that what we're seeing, just examples which are really driving that agenda ahead of the legislation. So just and the importance of starting to incorporate that social value and those things into everything that you're doing, as opposed to the sort of bid team or the group who are sort of trying to answer those questions. And just to illustrate that, for example, talking with an organisation selling to a healthcare system in the Nordics, they've now gone from 10% and they've gone ahead of the EU procurement directive that's coming through, and they're now looking at 30% of the scoring of their marks are around the environmental footprint and the carbon cycle of the products that you're selling them. You need to be quoting that up front. So absolutely right, the legislation's coming, and it's messy at the moment because people are interpreting it in different ways, but actually the market's already moving, so I think we're in the right place.
Thank you very much. Market forces. Wonderful. Well, look, thank you to our guest speakers today, Sarah Wren, Hills, or her Hills, as it might be called in the future, Hertfordshire Health and Independent Living Services. Loyd, Davies from Leicestershire, thank you so much. Nathan, thank you ever so much for coming along and giving us that insight to what the social value portal can deliver. And of course, Simon, you're a known face in Hertfordshire for your delivery of skills, and thank you so much indeed for keeping the thing moving forward. So, and thank you to all of you for joining us, and I hope that you enjoy our buffet, which is outside. So thank you so much indeed for joining us today. Thank you.